Good morning. My apologies for the lack of posts for a while. I've been busy. No excuse. But I've been thinking a lot about education. The education of our children, which is there's not nearly enough priority put on this subject. So with what's going on in our country, and right now there's all these comparisons with the demise of the Roman Republic, comparing the demise of America with the demise of the Roman Republic. And for history, I read H.G. Wells, The Outline of History. First of all, I read Will Durant, of course, but Will Durant said probably the best historian was H.G. Wells, who ironically wrote, the only thing he was famous for was War of the Worlds and The Time Machine and these fiction books, which were phenomenal. But yeah, so according to H.G. Wells, the essence of the Roman Republic's failure was that it could not sustain unity, obviously. In the early stages, the citizens had a certain tradition of justice and good faith in the loyalty of all citizens to the law and to the goodness of this law for all citizens. It clung to this idea of the importance of the law and of law abidingness nearly into the 1st century BC. So it goes on. About conditions for civilization, for a good culture. The first of these conditions is that there should be a common political idea in the minds of all men, an idea of the state thought of as the personal possession of each individual and as the backbone fact of the scheme of duties. It goes on to say, in Rome, in the Roman Republic, there was a need of an organized teaching of the history of the main laws, of the general intentions of the state toward everyone in this moral unity, if this moral unity was to be maintained. But the need was never realized, and no attempt at any such teaching was ever made. At the time, it could not have been made. It is inconceivable that it ever could have been made. The knowledge was not there, and there existed no class from which needed teachers could be drawn, and no conception of the organization of any such systematic moral and intellectual training as the teaching organization of Christianity with its creeds and catechisms. So, moreover, we know nowadays that even a universal education of this sort supplies only the basis for a healthy republican state. Next to education, there must come abundant, prompt, and truthful information of what is going on in the state, and frank and free discussion of the issues of the time. Even nowadays, these functions are performed only very imperfectly and badly by the press we have. So it says in the Roman Republic, it goes on to talk about the press and how in the Roman state it was not even attempted. The Roman citizens got his political facts from rumor and the occasional orator, like Cicero. So, yeah, that was pretty much lots of theories about why the Roman Republic died, and this is probably top of the list. The failure to educate the future. And that's pretty much the crux of our country. I don't know about the rest of the world, like European countries, but yeah, the curriculum of education has been really hijacked. We have just shitty curriculum to teach the future. And I also have another book, the source book in the Philosophy of Education by Kilpatrick, which is pretty fundamental. This was written in 1923, and it's a compilation of the philosophy of education. So some different quotes about education. To an extent characteristic of no other institution save that of the state itself, the school has power to modify the social order. This is a quote from Dewey. And Dewey had a profound effect. Of course, the main core of education was, in our country at least, was started by Horace Mann, who was pretty phenomenal. I mean, he was pretty sincere. He didn't try to brainwash future generations into working in factories like previous educators. But so as a side note, there's a quote from Horace Mann that I looked on the internet. It was a speech given to the graduating class of Harvard back in the mid 1850, the same time as the Transcendentalists, coincidentally. And he said this quote that affected me this morning. He said, we should all as human beings be ashamed to die until we have provided some service for mankind. Think about that. That's profound. I mean, how many of us just struggle to survive and pay bills and then die a meaningless death? But he encouraged the graduating class of Harvard at the time, before it was corrupt like it is now, that they should be ashamed to die until they have provided a service, some service to humanity. That's so. Another quote by Erasmus: "Give me for a few years the direction of education, and I agree to transform the world." Okay, and this is a quote from Bismarck, Otto von Bismarck in Germany, of Prussia, which I will launch into after this. "The German child, when handed over to the teacher, is like a blank sheet of paper, and all that is written upon a child during the course of elementary education is written with indelible ink and will last a lifetime. The soul of a child is like wax. Therefore, he who directs the school directs the country's future." And with that, I'm going to go into, not many people know this. This, again, is another quote from H.G. Wells, Outline of History, Volume 2. And, yeah, mind you, H.G. Wells wrote this. I mean, the first edition was 1920, and it's been revised, obviously, but so I read this years ago. He was writing about Nazi Germany and the rise of Germany, World War I and World War II. So let me, gotta put my glasses on for this. Doing a lot of reading. So this says, in Nazi Germany, not many people understand this, but Nazi Germany didn't start with Hitler. Okay? So it says, where does this start? So according to this, around the year 1871, did you hear that? 1871. Hitler's rise to power was about 1930, correct? So this is what it says about Germany in 1871. A teacher, a professor who did not teach and preach in and out of season the racial, moral, intellectual, and physical superiority of the Germans to all other peoples, their extraordinary devotion to war and their dynasty, and their inevitable destiny under that dynasty to lead the world, was a marked man, doomed to failure and obscurity. German historical teaching became an immense, systematic falsification of the human past, with a view to the Hohenzollern future. That's the ruling dynasty of the Germans. All other nations were represented as incompetent and decadent. The Prussians were the leaders and regenerators of mankind. This is according to H.G. Wells in 1871, people. The young German read in his school books, heard it in church, found it in his literature, had it poured into him with passionate conviction by his professor. It was poured into him by all his professors. Lecturers in biology or mathematics would break off from their proper subject to indulge in long passages of patriotic rant. Only minds of extraordinary toughness and originality could resist such a torrent of suggestion. Insensibly, there was built up in the German mind a conception of Germany and its emperor as of something splendid and predominant, as nothing else had ever been before, a godlike nation in shining armor, brandishing the good German sword in a world of inferior and badly disposed peoples. We have told our story of Europe. The reader may judge whether the glitter of the German sword is exceptionally blinding. Germania was deliberately intoxicated. She was systematically kept drunk with this sort of patriotic rhetoric. It is the greatest of the Hohenzollern crimes that the crown constantly and persistently tampered with education, particularly with historical teaching. Okay, yeah, as a side note, our American education curriculum is shit. Also, history, world history is fucking reduced to memorizing dates. I remember in social studies, in the only history I remember, and I was born in 1970, so my education is roughly 1980 to 1980 to 1990. So the only thing I remember from history, and this is probably from junior high school, is learning about African countries and African tribes. That is really and that was taught in social studies. Learning about African countries. Memorizing African countries. Okay? Now, that was probably part of a whole new agenda that the modern curriculum writers came up with. But it was kind of pointless information. So no other modern state, back to Germany, had so perverted education. The oligarchy of the Crown Republic of Great Britain may have crippled and starved education, but the Hohenzollern monarchy corrupted it and prostituted it. It cannot be said too clearly. It is the most important fact in the history of the last half century, and this was written in 1920, that the German people were methodically indoctrinated with the idea of a German world predominance based on might, and with the theory that war was a necessary thing in life. The key to German historical teaching is to be found in Count Moltke's dictum, which says, perpetual peace is a dream, and it is not even a beautiful dream. War is an element in the order of the world ordained by God. Without war, the world would stagnate and lose itself in materialism. And the German philosopher Nietzsche found himself quite at one with the pious field marshal. I mean, it just goes on. This sort of teaching, which pervaded the German Empire from end to end, was bound to be noted abroad, bound to alarm every other power and people in the world, bound to provoke an anti-German confederation, and it was accompanied by a parade of military and presently of naval preparation that threatened France, Russia, and Britain alike. It affected the thoughts, the manners, and morals of the German people. So it goes on to say, by one of those accidents in history that personify and precipitate catastrophes, the ruler of Germany, the Emperor William II, embodied the new education of his people and the Hohenzollern tradition in its completest form. And he came to the throne at 1888 at the age of 29. So yeah, and then came Bismarck. But yeah. So that was the start of Nazi Germany. And it was started by the education of the future generations. So yeah, I think I'm passionately burdened about this. I've been passionately burdened about this for years. We do a grievous disservice to our children We do a grievous disservice to our children. I would, for the past, at least the past 50 years, probably more. Yeah. What are we doing? I wish it was within my power to write, to put down a universal curriculum that our children need to know. First of all, I would have them learn religions. Second of all, like not just Christianity, but all religions, so they can have an overview. Well, actually, no, not religion. First of all, they should be really profoundly taught in history, in world history. Maybe when they're in elementary school, the basics, and then as they grow up, more specific, but not just memorizing fucking dates and kings. Second of all, philosophy. All the major philosophers. This is not taught in school. And also, as far as biology is necessary, but also an intimate knowledge imparted to our children of the human body and how it works, and nutrition, and fucking nutrition, and the things that actually keep your body healthy. That is vital. I mean, there might not even be a need for doctors if everybody was informed on this. But like I said, you look around at society. Society today is the product of education in previous years. And what do you see? You see people gobbling down Doritos and Cheetos and soda. You see people dying of cancer. You see people who have no idea how economics work, or credit cards, or interest, or any of this stuff, just barely trying to keep their heads above water. This is, and then most people, if not all people, they've been to school. School is fucking required for all these people. For all the people on planet Earth. School is a requirement, and you're in trouble if you skip a day of school. But what is school taught people? Nothing. Look around you. Look around you at the people just struggling to survive right now. It's unreal. And to think that you get in trouble if you don't go to school for one day. It's ridiculous. So, I don't know. That's my rant. If we care about our future, and I wish more people would talk about this, because this is vital to society, to the future of our society, that human beings, that our children specifically, would be properly educated, not just put in daycare for the day, or behavior management, which is pretty much what schools are nowadays. It's behavioral management. And look at the future citizens that it's producing. It's sad, and that's the exact reason the world society is heading in the direction it's heading. I mean, I could keep going on. I mean, one of the tragedies also is, well, as another side note, oh, I forgot her name. Well, there's a woman I met years ago who wrote, she was the main, the top administrator of the Department of Education under Ronald Reagan. Charlotte Iserby. And she wrote a book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America years ago. And it was a thick book, and it compiled how the American education system was hijacked years ago. I mean, by what she was saying, by communist and socialist ideals. So, and most parents are fucking clueless about this. They send their kids off to public school and they get brainwashed and indoctrinated with shit education. Even math, for fuck's sake. It's a proven fact that even the way you're taught math, like, molds your brain. So yeah, she passed away, but she was trying to expose just the corruption, the absolute corruption of the modern educational curriculum that our children are taught. So, yeah, I could go on, but that's my rant for the day. And hopefully I'll be posting more and more, more often as I can. All right. See ya.